Hi there, Sandra here from the Schwowin's Nest. Thanks for joining me today. My first project is using this Dollar Tree mason jar sign. I really love the print on it. I don't like the glitter. So I'm just taking my ruler. I couldn't find my little Dollar Tree scraper that I usually use. But in hindsight, I thought this was a better idea because then I would be able to just scrape off the glitter and not ruin any of the paper because I need to keep it this way. I love this little wreath pattern. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's kind of vintagey looking. So I decided just to take some of my white DIY chalk paint and a small little brush and give the inside of the wreath a couple of coats just to camouflage all of the lettering that is still there. There's a little bit of residue and glue left. So I'm just going to cover that up with some paint. If you've been watching my channel, you know I love printing on tissue paper, so I created this little Pumpkins Are the Spice of Life printable, which of course will be available down in my description box. I'm just going to go ahead and cut the tissue paper to fit into the wreath, and I want to make sure that I don't touch any of the outside, so I'm just using my pencil to draw out the lines where I need to cut. I'm using Mod Podge to apply the tissue paper printable, and I'm just going to go ahead and use my brush to place it down where I need it to be, and then I'll just use some more Mod Podge over the top of it to get out any wrinkles or creases. To make the sign look more finished and a little bit more high end, I'm taking some of this jute rope and I'm going to just go all the way around the edge, including the very top portion. I'm just using hot glue. That's the easiest way to just get this rope on there, and I'm going to continue all the way around until I get back down to the bottom. I grabbed a little piece of broken shim and I'm going to use that as a pumpkin stem. So I'll just hot glue that right to the back of the sign. I'm going to cut some pieces of the Hawaiian skirt that also came from the Dollar Tree. It's just going to substitute for raffia because I can't seem to find any of that, but I really like working with this. It's a lot softer and it looks just as good. I'm going to add a couple of sweet little pumpkins, and I'm also going to add a solo wood flower, and this one is called a skin flower because it has a little bit of brown on it. So you can get skinless without brown and you can get skin with the brown. And I think these are just beautiful for rustic fall decor and any time of the year. I love solo wood flowers. If you're interested, I do have a link down in my description box. I grabbed some of this neutral cotton string that's really thin. I think I wrapped it around my hand 20 to 30 times. Now I'm going to take another piece of it and just tie off the top. Then I'll cut out the bottom so it's all fringed and then make it nice and even. I lucked out the last time I was at the Dollar Tree and I found some of this orange and white gingham ribbon. I'm just going to glue a few different lengths together to make sort of a bow, or I don't know. I guess it's not really a bow, but maybe more tails of a bow. Anyhow, I'm just going to glue them together and then I'm going to dovetail them as well. Then I'm going to glue the ribbon down first and then glue the tassel right on top. So it looks like it's a little bit layered. And I'm just tucking them in underneath the pumpkins a little wee bit. And that's just going to make it stick out to the side, which I think is really cute. Using another piece of ribbon, I'm just going to fold it over on itself and make a couple of loops. So I'm just gluing it this way, and then I'm going to take the other end, fold it over, and I'm going to try and make the tails about the same length. And that's just going to create a tiny little bow. Then I added another solo wood flower and some pipberry garland from the Dollar Tree, twirled to look like little stems of a pumpkin, and I think this turned out looking really high end. My last project today is using this little wooden picnic table that I picked up at Dollarama. It has two salt and pepper shakers and a mustard and ketchup container, but I'm not going to need those. Using some burnt umber acrylic paint that has been diluted with water and a sponge brush, I'm going to go ahead and just give this a faux stain. You can see that it's got the holes at the top, and that would be to hold those little condiments, but I'm not going to be using that. So these are just going to get covered up and you won't even notice that they're there. The first thing I'm going to do is add some Spanish moss to it, just with some hot glue. I have a bunch of things left over from my stash from last year doing fall, so I decided to just use some of these up. So I've got a couple of different shaped pumpkins, and I've got the little mini hay bales from the Dollar Tree. I've got some acorns that came from my front yard because I have a large oak tree, and I've also got some pipberry garland, which is my absolute favorite. But first, I'm going to use these two tower blocks and some of the Hawaiian skirt raffia and make my own little hay bale. So I'm just going to wrap it around and around and then change directions and wrap it again and then have a few little straggly pieces hanging out. I'm going to glue the hay bale to the one corner of the picnic table and then add some other little embellishments too. Looking in my stash again, I found two of these little wooden flower pots. I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue and just some of the green moss from Dollar Tree around the edges. And then I'm going to glue in some tiny little white flowers that sort of look like mums, which are the flower of the fall. So I think these turned out super cute and they're going to make a great addition to this little picnic table. I put one of the pots on top of the straw bale and the other one in front of the pumpkins. And now I'm just adding some different embellishments to finish this piece. I think it's super adorable. I've decided to flip this spool. It held some electrical wire and the wire was done. So I grabbed it. This was hanging around at my cottage and so it was absolutely free. So who doesn't like free? I'm also going to be using some Dollar Tree supplies. I'm going to use 3 of their cookie sheets. I thought I might use these styrofoam circles, but I didn't end up using them in the end. You're also going to need something that has a fairly wide surface. I'm using the bottom end of this Dollar Tree craft scraper, and you can see what I'm doing is just rubbing it along the cookie sheet to get rid of all those little bumps. You can also use the end of the scissors. You can use a scraper if you have something like a plastic scraper, that would probably work too, a spatula, a spoon, anything that will give you that smooth surface. And using hot glue, remember when you're using hot glue on metal, it gets super hot. These cookie sheets warm up really quickly as well. So what you're going to do is use something else. I'm just using the end of this scraper because it is silicone, and that's just going to help me protect my fingers. I'll do the same thing on the bottom, and then when I take the second piece, I'm going to overlap them just a little bit. Because it's in a circle, I'm not going to be able to do them 100% straight, so I do want them to overlap so they get this type of shape. It's going to be so cute when it's finished. I've just got one more piece to glue on. Take a look at this. It is absolutely so adorable. I was so pleased with how it was turning out. So excited that my vision was actually working out. Sometimes as crafters, these things don't always work out. So it's actually I'm going to use the rim of the cookie sheet and fold it over onto itself on an angle so it gets bigger as I go. Then I'm going to glue the two ends together and then hot glue it on top of the pumpkin, and that will create a beautiful stem. Using another piece of the edge, I'm just going to press it flat and then cut a couple of pieces that I'm going to be able to use as the little twirly vine pieces at the top of the pumpkin stem. I'm just going to use my screwdriver and wind it around the handle to make a nice big fat curly Q for my pumpkin stem. The original spool had some rusty black kind of markings on it. They were kind of dots, or it looked like someone had spray painted it. It's just how it oxidized, I guess. So what I'm doing is just taking some hammered metal finish paint in black, and I'm just spraying a little bit on there to get the same type of look that the spool got. So just some little spritzes, not too much color on this, but I just want to kind of dull it down a wee bit. Once the spray paint was dry, I took my honey brown acrylic paint and a really stiff brush, and I'm going to just flick some of this paint onto the pumpkin. I want this to look like kind of rusty spots, or I liked how it looked with the black, but I wanted it to have a little bit more of some fall pumpkin color to it as well. Here's how the pumpkin looks now that it's all finished. Let me know what you think. My first project for you today is using these Dollar Tree Farm Fresh pumpkin signs. Now these were the design from last year, but I believe the pumpkin shape is still available this year. It just has a new design on the front of it. I'm going to just disassemble it by taking the leaf off and that jute string because I'm not going to need that. I've got 6 of these. I only ended up using 5, but I just wanted to make sure that I had enough. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is scoring with my box cutter and my ruler, and I'm going to be removing that stem because I don't need that. This is like a multi-density fiber board, almost just like a really thick cardboard, and when you score it with your box cutter, you can just snap off the piece very easily. Next, I'm going to do the same thing with my box cutter, but I'm going to score it in half. So I want to have each of these pumpkins cut in half. I'm going to find the middle, then cut my first piece, and then use one of the halves as a template to cut the rest of the pieces. Once you've got it cut in half, you can just easily clean up any of the pieces that are still there just using the knife again. I'm now going to use some of this crack shot spackle and just fill in those holes that were used to hang these signs. They could probably be filled in with paint, but I just wanted to make sure that they were nice and solidly filled before I started to paint. Once the spackle's dry, I'm just taking a really fine 220 grit sandpaper and just sanding it nice and smooth. This is a tube from a roll of gift wrap. I've cut it in half, and now I'm using Rust-Oleum chalked paint in the color Chiffon Cream, and I'm going to give this a couple of coats, but just 3/4 of the way. I'm going to leave that top section brown for now. I'm also going to give all of these pumpkin halves a couple coats of the Chiffon Cream. On this front side where that black label is, I needed to do 2 coats. For the brown on the back, 1 coat was sufficient. Now I'm going to distress with a color that's very similar to the Waverly Mineral Chalk Paint. This one is called Mushroom, and it's just a latex paint that I had left over from painting my walls. So I've loved the color and I use it quite a bit. I'm just going to do a dry brush technique because I just want to accentuate some of the brush strokes that were made when I painted it with the Chiffon Cream. I gave the top part of the roll a little bit of dark brown paint, and now I'm just going to dry brush it with the mineral color too. I'm using hot glue to attach the pumpkin slices to the roll. You've got to use a lot of hot glue and you've got to hang on to it a long time for it to set up. Otherwise, it's just going to fall off. So I put a bead of glue down where the slice of the pumpkin is going to meet the roll. Then I also add some more hot glue on either side of the slice. And then I just use my finger with my little silicone pad on there and smooth out the hot glue so it doesn't look too chunky. I'm now going to use a makeup sponge and some acrylic paint in the color Honey Brown. It's a really kind of a muted brownish orange color. It's really nice, and I love it for farmhouse decor because it's really not too bright of an orange. And I'm just going to dab my makeup sponge all the way around on all of these edges, and if a little bit of paint gets on the chiffon cream, that's okay. It's going to just give it some little bit of added character and make it look a little bit more like a pumpkin. So as you can tell from this, the brown is meant to be the stem of the pumpkin, but I didn't want it straight up like that. It just didn't look natural. So I'm taking my box cutter and making 4 slits about a ½ inch down, and then I'm just going to bend those cardboard pieces in on themselves just to give it more of a stem look, a little bit more natural looking, I guess. I also cut a bit of a slit about halfway down because I wanted to give the stem a little bit of a crook. So taking out a little piece of the cardboard allowed me to just bend it without breaking anything. I decided to take some hot glue and glue down the stem pieces just so they would be in the shape that I wanted. I didn't like them kind of just all ragged like that, so I'm just going to bend them over and glue them in place. No farmhouse project would be complete without some type of twine or jute rope or burlap. So I've got this wired cord from the Dollar Tree. It's jute rope or twine, but it's got a wire inside of it. So I'm just going to be twirling it around my pencil so I can get the curly cues of the pumpkin, and then I'm going to wrap the center portion around the bottom of the stem. I'm going to go around 3 or 4 times, and I'll secure it with hot glue so it doesn't pop off. I'm going to use one of these burlap oak leaves from the Dollar Tree. They come in a pack of 5, and I'll just hot glue that right onto the stem. I am so happy with how this turned out. Check out this adorable pumpkin. I'm using this Hauser light green paint from Americana. It's an acrylic paint, but I have added some talc into the bottle to make it more of a chalk paint. That way I only have to give it 1 coat. I'm going to go around the outside edge here with the green, and then I'm going to give this pumpkin a couple of coats of the chiffon cream Rust-Oleum chalk paint. This second little pumpkin shape is from the Dollar Tree. It was one from last year that I had in my stash, and it's got some glitter on it. I am not a fan of the glitter that they put on everything. I wish they would stop doing that. Anyhow, I'm going to take my little scraper and I'm going to scrape off as much of the glitter as I can. This is the best way that I have found to get glitter off of things. I'm going to give this a couple of coats of chiffon cream on the front and the back. For the edges of this pumpkin, I'm going to use my favorite fall color, which is this honey brown from Americana as well. Again, I have put some talc inside of it to make it a chalk paint, and I love this color. It's such a nice muted soft orange. It's not that bright orange that you see everywhere. I'm not sure where I got this paint. It might have been from Michael's, but I've had it for many, many years and it's still going strong. Once both of these were dry, I decided to use my little baby chip brush and just give them a little bit of distressing around the edges as you see me doing here. So I'm going to use the honey brown on the one and then I'm going to use the green on the other. On this pumpkin, I used a little cork as the stem, and on the round pumpkin, I simply just wrapped the stem. I've got my pieces printed out here on the water slide decal paper, and it's already been sprayed, and I'll show you that process in a little bit. What I'm going to do first is just trim off the edges It's good to work with about a quarter of an inch or so all the way around your decal. I've got a little bit more here, but I'm trying to make it as evenly looking as possible. You don't really see it, but sometimes if you're going to be doing some distressing on top of it, you might get a little bit of an outline, but I'm okay with that. What I'm going to do next is just put it in some warm water. I've got a flat dish with not room temperature water, a little bit warmer than that. I do find that it works a little bit better when your water is just a touch warmer. And I'm going to hold it down for about 60 seconds. I'm going to make sure that it's fully in the water. And once it doesn't curl up anymore, you can just let go of it and let it sit. The next step is to get your project a little wet, not too wet, just a little bit. I'm putting some on with my finger here, just where the decal is going to go, and that will help the decal to adhere better to my project. Now it's time to take the decal out of the water. I'm just going to let it drip a little bit so it's not totally sopping wet. Then I always hold my decal over my project, and using my thumb and my forefinger, I'm just going to give the decal and the paper a little bit of a push. There you go. I want to have that decal released from the paper just a little wee bit. Then I place it onto my project, smooth out the decal on the top, and then gently pull the paper out from underneath. Go really slow with this and you'll see it just stick automatically. It is a really cool thing to see. Now using my finger a little bit wet because I don't want it to stick on the decal, because that will make it tear if your finger is too dry. And I'm very gently just pushing out all of the bubbles, all of the water, and making it really nice and smooth. Then once I've got it as smooth as I can, I'm taking a Kleenex. Now, you can use a paper towel, you can use a soft cloth. I have just found, I've used all of those things, that a Kleenex works really good. And I just dab and push, dab and push. So if I see any bubbles, I'm just going to dab and push them out to the edge. And then I'll be able to just wipe it all up and it will be perfect. I have to say, I am really pleased with how this turned out. I love all of these little printables that I made. Of course, they'll be available for all of you as well. Just click the link down in my description box, which will take you to my website. When I do signs for my tiered trays, I like to do them double-sided. So I created 4 water slide decals for the front and back of both of these pumpkins. And this is how they turned out. I did the same process with the water slide decals as I just showed you, and they are amazing. If you're interested in trying out some of the Hippo water slide decal paper, I'll have a link down in my description box and also pinned in the comments. It's a really cost-effective way to make some adorable home decor. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed these projects and got some inspiration to start crafting for fall decor for your home. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on anything else I have to share. Bye for now.